Hello and welcome to another episode of A Wicked Parley.
Hello.
Today, you may notice, is not live. So sorry for those who want to talk in the chat.
You can
Unfortunately.
comment in the comments below, and we'll be happy to get to it, though.
Indeed. Yes, there is that. Also, you may see this happen periodically in the next several months, as there are lots of busy things going on. So
So
bear with
many.
us. But we wanted to make sure we provide you some interesting content. And considering that the lovely Rose here has some expertise in this particular topic, we'll look at a particular interesting article tonight and see if we can't unravel some mysteries of sorts. Or
I will
more
do my
specific,
best.
or more specifically, figure out who's fucking up and who's not.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun dun. All right, so Rose, when it comes to the the article, want to go ahead and throw
Yes.
that up?
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about ChatGPT.
OpenAI. And now
Yep,
here's a question
OpenAI.
I have to
What's up?
ask. ChatGPT has multiple versions. I
Yes.
believe ChatGPT 3 was the one that kind of started making headlines in a big way. And I know that
Yeah.
they're currently on ChatGPT 4.
hmm
So, do you know the differences between each, or are they just kind of backroom stuff that makes them more like easy to use?
I believe at the moment it's a lot of backroom things because every time they make improvements, they tend to essentially update the version
Mm-hmm.
such that if people want to use the old version for any reason, they can go back to it. So rather than, keeping it the same file, if something happens in the new version that didn't happen in the old version or vice versa, they can just go back to each of those individual versions and try to pick out the code that works and try to kick out the code that doesn't.
Oh, okay.
It's the reason why a bunch of when you code something, you
Mm-hmm.
have a bunch of different copies because if you know code works,
Mm-hmm.
you make a copy of it so that when you're further testing, you don't accidentally mess with the code that works and completely wreck the system. Because if that's the live one, that's the live code that's running the thing,
Uh-huh.
and you don't accidentally make a copy and then you run it again and it breaks all of a sudden, that means everything relying on that code is now broken because you didn't make a copy to mess with it.
That sounds incredibly confusing to someone like me who doesn't know anything about that kind of stuff.
Essentially, say you have copy one and copy two, right?
Uh-huh.
Let's say that the entire system runs on copy one.
Okay.
Let's say you didn't make copy two, but you decided to try and update a couple things from copy one, right?
Oh, I see. All right, now I'm
If the
starting to
entire
understand
thing
this.
runs on copy one and you mess that copy one up, because that's the one everything runs on and it's
Uh-huh.
now broken, the entire system's now broken, when you could have saved yourself the trouble, made a copy two, left copy one alone until you made sure that the updated copy two works.
You know, I have played many games where some things happened that were kind of screwy. Something tells me that maybe the reason why they were screwy because somebody didn't do their fucking job. You
Yes,
know?
it's good practice for a reason. It's one of the things I do in my research. It's called once I get something to work, make an immediate copy so I can still play with it
Uh-huh.
without messing up the perfect copy until it
Ah,
can get updated.
I
So
see.
that is also a reason for the different versions because it's been slowly updating, but they want to make sure that the version they have that everything works on
Mm-hmm.
isn't breaking while they're experimenting.
Well, that certainly seems like that would be important to say the least. But
Just a wee bit.
I'm curious about some other things that might get raised up and questions I might have with the article. So let's go ahead and jump
Oh,
into
of course.
that. Let's
Yeah, I
shift
spent like
gears.
5 minutes on that.
It's all good, no worries. I'm sure it's interesting to somebody. Um,
Totally. All right.
all right,
Feel free
so
to have it.
okay, ChatGPT is making universities rethink plagiarism. Students and
Yeah.
professors can't decide whether the AI chatbot is a research tool or a cheating engine. Now, I have to say,
Yeah.
I have had a discussion with people within the psychology department about this particular thing on my campus,
Hmm.
and it seems to be they seem to be like, oh, we're going to be able to catch this,
Oh
but
yeah, no.
I have this suspicion that they are not.
Oh yeah, no, 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 no. Absolutely not. I've used it before,
Hmm.
and it's just it's catching somebody in the act is much harder now, depending on the assignment.
I would imagine so.
And
Uh,
I'll tell you a bit more if that comes up
oh,
later.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, probably more than likely. So.
In late December of his sophomore year, Rutgers University student Kai Cobbs came to a conclusion he never thought possible. Artificial intelligence might just be dumber than humans. After listening to his peers rave about the generative AI tool ChatGPT, Cobbs decided to toy around with a chatbot while writing an essay on the history of capitalism, best known for its ability to generate long-form written content in response to user input prompts. Cobbs expected the tool to produce a nuanced and thoughtful response to his specific research directions. Instead, his screen produced a generic, poorly written paper he'd never dare to claim as his own.
And you shouldn't.
I'm going to say this now. I genuinely, like, I've heard many things about ChatGPT, and I would say that by when I heard about the third one
Yeah.
started getting spooky because it was able to generate different ideas in a way that had completely different answers. Even if you inputted the same thing
Yes.
into the same program, it would produce a completely different like thing. And
Oh, yes, that is one of the reasons why it would be extremely hard to catch somebody in the act
yeah, and
for writing assignments.
I also kind of feel like this is a byproduct of a poorly planned system. Like, I think the ability to convey a concept and idea through a written
Hmm.
paper is an outdated concept. I think that the ability to showcase knowledge isn't going to come from academic writing and hasn't for a very long time. And this is just a way of, I think, it's going to force things to be changed. And I think
Yes.
the first thing that's going to probably happen is papers are going to start being shorter and written in person, and papers are going to get really sloppy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's my suspicion. My other suspicion is that, in all likelihood, you're
Mhm.
probably going to see people up their cheating game to the point where eventually people aren't going to be able to do anything about it. So,
If there's a will, there's a way,
yeah.
and a student will always try to find an
Oh,
easy
I'm sure.
way.
Oh, there is definitely ways. So, like, my main thought process when it comes down to a lot of this stuff is that you just have to be prepared for bad things to happen.
Hmm.
But my question is gonna wait till after this next paragraph because I think it's important.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, the quality of writing was appalling. The phrasing was awkward and it lacked complexity. Cobb says, "I just logically can't imagine a student using writing that was generated through ChatGPT for a paper or anything when the content is just plain bad." Now, I know I'm kind of breaking this thing, but I really want to say
Okay.
this. I feel like, and this is a feeling, this is a gut instinct, that this is written to dissuade people from using it because if anyone who's ever actually used this thing in relatively recently,
Hmm.
they would instantly understand that everything this person has written so far about this is probably incorrect. Like, I would say, like, it's not that it's impossible, it's that perhaps the standards for what they're expecting written responses to be is either really high,
Hmm.
which of course they're not going to be. It's not going to necessarily create a nuanced paper, but most people's writing abilities don't fall in that category anyways.
Yeah.
And so most people who are in college, I think, average about a B in most of their papers that are written
Me.
when they're not like cheating, when they're not doing something that's like kind of like absurd or it's like obvious.
Yeah.
Like they're anyways. There's
Okay.
another thing. But my question for you is: do you think
Yeah.
do you agree with that? Like, do you think that like this writing is perhaps maybe not telling the full truth and not being accurate?
I would say it's not as accurate as it's trying to portray because it can give decent writing depending on how complex you want the writing to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because these things, when it does the chat generation, is based off of algorithms,
Mm-hmm.
specifically based off of probability, which it gets through the training data set.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what it does is it takes a bunch of written material and it essentially combs through the material and based on the starting word, it has a probability for what word should come after it.
Mm-hmm.
So if the essential like training writing is flawed, then it's going to still pick that up, which means the algorithm itself is going to be flawed. So if it takes a bunch of bad writing, obviously it's going to be bad. If it takes a bunch of good writing, it'll only be as good as the kind of average, maybe, of
Mm-hmm.
all those writings because it has to take into concept everything. So if you're trying to make a complicated piece, such as this research paper,
Mm-hmm.
not the good idea. It can give you a starting point. It can give you a basis to work with, such as, if you're completely stuck off how to go about such a paper, you can, of course, use ChatGPT to come up with some basis essay. But you should not take, nobody should take that as gospel, like, at all. It's kind of like a template you can follow. Like, some of my teams have used it to create a template because we don't know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
But we always take that template and make it better because the AI, the ChatGPT, is only going to be as good as its training data.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that like when I hear you talk about this, it just kind of sounds like the current version of it isn't as nuanced as perhaps some of the more demanding writing would require. But
Hmm.
just because it's not there yet doesn't mean it won't be there. And I have a
Yes.
feeling that considering the things that I've seen and the types of questions that I've seen it get asked and answer,
Yes.
it's getting better every day.
Yes, yes, it
So
is. Because whenever you use ChatGPT, those little like thumbs up and thumbs down with every response that it gives you?
yes,
You clicking whether that is a thumbs up for like a good response or a thumbs down is actually training
yes.
the bot. So
So yes,
as
we're
more
learning.
people give more feedback, it's taking in that feedback as more training data,
Hmm.
like almost live.
Which is kind of crazy to think about it. Okay, let's jump back to this.
Okay.
Not everyone shares Cobb's disdain. Ever since OpenAI launched the chatbot in November, educators have been struggling with how to handle a new wave of student work produced with the help of artificial intelligence. While some public school systems, like New York City's, have banned the use of ChatGPT on school devices and networks to curb cheating, universities have been reluctant to follow suit. In higher education, the introduction of generative AI has raised thorny questions about the definition of plagiarism and academic integrity on campuses where new digital research tools come into play all the time. And
Hmm.
I'm going to say this now.
Okay.
So, I am very much a traditional student in the truest sense of the word.
Okay.
I read the books that
Yes.
are presented me. I cover the chapters. I memorize key terms. I do test questions that are the back of a book. I follow along lectures often online,
Uh-huh.
things like that, right? So,
Yes.
a very traditional student. Now, I have a very average score when it comes to things. GPA. I'm not particularly phenomenal. I'm not particularly bad. I'm kind of like average. And it came to my knowledge recently that I had conversations with a couple people that showcased a very interesting method for studying, where they would utilize like control F or control C, where they just they can type in a keyword and they can highlight
Control F.
control F, and then literally all the instances of the keyword appear, and they
Yes.
only focus on that.
Hmm.
So rather than having to read and memorize an entire chapter or several chapters, they only
Hmm.
memorize a couple of sentences.
Yes.
And to me, I feel like this is completely fucked up because like it accelerates not only the study time, but the accuracy of what you're remembering because there's fewer things for you to remember.
Hmm.
And I just feel like it's like an extreme advantage that some students have, and not everyone has access to that, or not everyone's been exposed to that. And so, like, it makes me really like significantly question, why this would even be a problem in the first place, considering how many other things exist that allow people to succeed in ways that not everyone has access to. And to be fair, and I'll be very clear about this too, if you control F you like a question or tab and pull up everything that the document has, you are not learning, and it definitely, I think, would violate academic integrity because you aren't actually studying all the material presented. You're hyper focusing on the material that you're being tested on. And this is why when we talked about educational problems in a past episode, why we said that there was an issue with retention of knowledge, because it's being able to keep that knowledge, but also in the pursuit of retaining knowledge, you are openly dismissing other forms of knowledge. And so, like, I wonder, does ChatGPT necessarily create a problem, or does it give, students another ability, at the very least, to, let's say, subvert the system, as it were? The system has always been subverted in one way or another. The ultra wealthy pay for certain test scores to go away or for them to bump up grades. The savvy will find exploits in the system. And I feel like this is one of those things. But what's your feelings about that?
I feel that ChatGPT is honestly just another tool. Because it does allow some hyper-focusing, as you've mentioned before, because people have been able to just take a document and control find or use Google. And yes, there are programs such as Proctorio or something to try and, dissuade online cheating. But there are, of course, ways to circumnavigate that, whether that is through a different device, whether that is through, some other tech that I don't know the name of. But to me, ChatGPT is just another tool. It's all about the academic integrity of the student involved. Do they want to use this as a tool, or do they want this to do their work for them? Because there are obviously going to be ways to get around certain rules and regulations in place.
It just sounds like a murky. It's murky.
It is very murky. Academic integrity is very, very murky in general. It's a very heavy honesty, self-honesty policy.
I feel like it falls under two categories, right? You have to either be like, okay, I either accept all of these things and this person is clearly working in the pursuit of knowledge, and so in that sense they're kind of like, it's okay. But because here's my reasoning for this, okay? Before anyone goes, oh my god, what is he saying? The main thing I'm approaching this from is from the concept that you still have to be aware enough to be able to input questions, suggestions, and ideas, right?
Yes.
In order to produce something. So if a professor is going to give you a paragraph question, I have come across many like this, and they're very frustrating. Then fuck the professor. Screw it. Let's see what the chatbot comes up with, and you kind of work with from there, kind of like you've been suggesting. Because I think a lot of people who try to teach, especially professors, because they don't require the certificates and the training and stuff like that, have absolutely no idea how to approach the student body. I think that most of them look at, they get to a point and they're like, oh, look, I've achieved all this much. I am so much better than everyone else. I am this great, glorious, knowledgeable person.
Is this a dig? It's a dig.
Perhaps I might be, pulling from personal experience before. But the main thing I'm
hopefully
trying
not at me.
No, it's not at you, Rose. You're fine. That's not at all. She is a lovely professor.
Thank you.
Yeah, she tutored me in statistics. She's wonderful. No, this is not at her. This is at like other people that I've had before.
Yeah, fair enough.
Perhaps
Ooh,
at Sac State. Perhaps something relating to community psychology. Perhaps, maybe. You know, maybe there's some things that people know about me that they would know how frustrated I am at certain professors. But the approach to knowledge primarily is about presenting new ideas and concepts and allowing students to find ways of putting those into practice. To actually be able to gain something, not just be lectured at for a bunch of time, not just being told what to do, follow along, because I don't think that's learning. I think that's just you're doing busy work.
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, like, I think that, like, the idea surrounding ChatGPT is controversial for a multitude of reasons. And towards the end here, I have some questions I have for you that have to do about sentience and, like, is ChatGPT self-aware? But
Yeah.
we'll get into that later. But
Okay.
the main thing I wanted to just like get across is that I don't think that it's necessarily a cheating tool. But we'll read
Get
more of
into
the
that.
article. Yeah, let's go through the article a bit more.
Okay.
All right. So make no mistake, the birth of ChatGPT does not mark the emergence of concerns relating to improper use of the internet in academia. When Wikipedia launched in 2001, universities nationwide were scrambling to decipher their own research philosophies and understandings of honest academic work, expanding policy boundaries to match pace with technological innovation. Now the stakes are a little more complex as schools figure out how to treat bot-produced work rather than weird attributional logistics. That's a fucking word.
Tell me about it.
The world of higher education is playing a familiar game of catch up, adjusting the rules, expectations, and perceptions as other professions adjusted to. The only difference now is that the internet can think for itself. Here's some things I want to point out. It's very
What's
important. I think very important to point out. So
Okay.
I began junior college in 2006. Okay.
Okay.
And I stopped for a couple of years and whatnot. So I remember, basically what university / college policies were surrounding Wikipedia. And they were brutal. They were like, Wikipedia is not a source. They still say this. This is still repeated. Wikipedia is not a source. It could be anything. It's like, no, Wikipedia actually could be construed as a source, or they can connect you with sources, because there are very large regulations now on who can adjust what and things like that. And back then, yes, it was a little bit more free, but it didn't change the fact that you still had access to information, and those informations were cited. And if you follow the citations to a credible source, then usually it was correct. And I think that, like, the reaction for most is that if it falls outside the purview and control of the university, they don't like it. And I think that's what we're seeing here with some of this stuff. And the thing that makes me upset is that, like, there'll be universities that basically say absolutely no to ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
But they'll use their own bots to grade assignments.
Yeah. What a big brain play, Matt.
I know, right? I mean, like, so, like, last semester I had a class that was entirely graded papers and
Oh, I
everything.
remember seeing that.
Yeah, by a bot. This
Yeah.
is the same university that does not allow, like, any sort of extra stuff at all. Like, you can't do anything. But yet they'll allow a bot to grade assignments. It's like, it's an extremely biased, unfair perspective, because it's like, how can you do this, but I can't?
Double standards?
Yeah, double standards are bad no matter how no matter how they're presented.
How you string it?
Yeah. Anywho, all right, let's go ahead and I was like, we've been derailing a little bit. We kept on talking about education instead of the ChatGPT part, and so I just kind of want to, like, focus on that a little bit.
I mean, the article is focusing on how ChatGPT is affecting the university system, so.
I know, but I'm just like, I feel like we talked too much about universities and not enough about ChatGPT.
I mean, we talked a lot about ChatGPT in the beginning, so.
Yeah.
Of course.
All right. According to ChatGPT, I can speak English. The definition of plagiarism is the act of using someone else's work or ideas without giving proper credit to the original author. But when the work is generated by something rather than someone, this definition is tricky to apply, as Emily Hipkin, a board member of Brown University's Academic Code Committee, puts it, the use of generative AI by students leads to a critical point of contention. If plagiarism is stealing from a person, she says, then I don't know that we have a person who is being stolen from. Hipkin is not alone in her speculation. Alice Daly, chair of the Academic Integrity Program at Villanova University, is also grappling with the idea of classifying an algorithm as a person, specifically if the algorithm involves text generation. Now, I have a question.
What's up?
Okay, so what happens if we get to a point where an AI becomes self-aware and it's an intelligence of its own that can think, at least be aware, self-aware. If it's not a person, which is fine to call it not a person, perhaps, we have to give it some sort of other sort of distinction because I am for the use of ChatGPT. Okay, I think the idea of plagiarism as a whole is a stupid thing in the first place because everyone plagiarizes from everyone since the time you were born. Okay, and here's the thing. Yes. Okay, I'm going to be far more simplistic than this. Okay. When you pass a science class, did you create the science that you wrote?
No.
How? At what grade do people learn citation?
High school?
So from kindergarten to middle school, you're just plagiarizing the fuck out of things. To me, like, the idea of plagiarism is stupid because at the end of the day, to imitate and to copy requires a level of awareness and knowledge that clearly shows that you understand the material. The only thing that it really conveys is that you chose not to do it the way they wanted you to. Now, I'm not really a big advocate for plagiarism, like, technically speaking, like, being used, but I also think the idea of being concerned about it is ignoring obvious facts about the learning process. Most people have to imitate to learn something.
Yes.
And no one's born
especially in mathematics.
Yeah. No one goes, oh, look, I woke up today and now I know trigonometry. It's like,
yeah, if you already knew it, why are you in school for it?
Exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I think the idea of plagiarism is just full. It's very strict people, probably in English departments and other places where writing intensive projects are done, and it's a way of being like job security. Like they're very, very, like neurotic, and they're very like, I don't know, or they're just like super, just like, I'm authoritarian. I dictate this. I'm on this mound of books, and I will utter to you, peasants below me.
Goodness.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But no, that's my thought.
I do get where you're coming from.
Yeah, like I think that, like, they want to, like, this grandstand. They want to use their lofty positions to specifically delegate specific concepts, and they think that they're the authority, the be all end all of a given subject, and that's not healthy for learning. And I think it really I think ChatGPT really can start. It's starting to. I think it's going to highlight the problems with this system, and it's going to remove, in a very definitive way, that type of authority.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, like, do you agree with all those things necessarily, or do you think that I'm going too far on that?
Okay, so I operate under the essential thought process that I operate under the thought process that everybody is essentially basing their work off of everything they've read or done so far, which is usually done by other people. So even if they don't like reference or cite something, I know that typically a written sentence or something is based off of something they've learned before, because you don't just come up with the information out of the blue. It comes from somewhere. So I kind of operate under that knowledge. So the plagiarism rule is the only thing I kind of agree with that is that I do want to see a student do their best and try to take what they know and kind of write in their own words because then I know it's like, hey, do you actually understand this or are you copy pasting?
Hmm.
Because it's just like you can't always do that in every real life scenario. So it's just like, do you actually know what you're talking about or are you just saying what I want to hear?
Hmm.
So that's kind of the thought process I operate on, as weirdly weird sounded as that is.
No, it makes perfect sense to me.
Because it's yeah, because it's just like I don't care if you use these tools. Like I personally, these are research tools to
Hmm.
me. They give you a basis if you don't know what the heck you're doing. And for a lot of writing assignments, that is honestly the case because as you said,
Hmm.
professors like to give paragraphs of information, and not every bit of that paragraph is actually going to be useful. So,
You know what ChatGPT is to me?
hmm.
It's the calculator in mathematics. You know,
Yeah.
it's like how we went from, what was it, an abacus? Is that how you say that thing with the
Yes,
beads?
abacus.
Yeah, we went from that to calculators, right?
Mhm.
This is the calculator quantum leap for words. Like
Yes, it is.
that's for me. We were in the Stone Ages still, and now thanks to
Natural language processing. Natural
anyways.
language processing is the coding specifically designed for text prediction and text generation.
So you're telling me is I could just leave ChatGPT on and then I just have anyone who emails me just it automatically generate responses?
You honestly could.
Okay, that would be fucked up. I'm not doing that. Like I'm like I don't know what I said. What do you mean you don't know what you said?
Yes, this is where human integrity comes into play.
Yeah.
Goodness.
All right. Okay.
Oh,
So here we go. Okay, here we go. All right.
here we go.
Daly believes that eventually professors and students are going to need to understand that digital tools that generate text rather than just collect facts are going to need to fall under the umbrella of things that can be plagiarized from. Although Daly acknowledges that this technological growth incites new concerns in the world of academia, she doesn't find it to be a realm entirely unexplored. I think we've been in a version of this territory for a while already, Daly says. Students who commit plagiarism often borrow material from somewhere. A website, for example, that doesn't have a clear authorial attribution.
Mhm.
I suspect the definition of plagiarism will expand to include things that produce. Eventually, Daly believes a student who uses text from ChatGPT will be seen as no different than one that copies and pastes chunk of text from Wikipedia without attribution.
I mean, I already do consider that.
Here's the thing I'm going to say about that,
Okay.
and I think it's important. It's a clear and important thing. So many people who do that
Hmm.
don't understand the material. That if you were to ask them a question pertaining to the material and they couldn't respond, then yes, that's when that's a problem.
Hmm.
But I think that like if you were that concerned about plagiarism, I think it kind of shows that there's a much deeper problem at play and that you're just a really shitty teacher. like I don't think that it's like, oh hey look, our students are like using these tools to plagiarize work. What's going on here? It's like maybe it's just you literally are bombarding them with information they feel they have no other choice because many of their futures rely on good grades.
Yeah, goodness
and
gracious.
and I think that like by bombarding them and forcing them down this way, you are
Hmm.
producing the very problem you're worried about. So it's to me, it's silly to have this discussion. And also, the people who actually like do it well,
Hmm.
you never find them.
Nope.
Like I have seen, I've walked down the various library in my particular campus. I have watched the people on their computers typing. I've seen the copy paste Wikipedia bullshit before. And
Hmm.
I'm telling anybody who looks at this, they 100%, the people who are good at it are so good you never know. You never know. It isn't just we're gonna switch out a couple words here and there. Like that's what you're looking for. The
Hmm.
truth is that many of these people will take a concept and they will rewrite the concept. It's the same concept, it's just rewritten in their own words.
Hmm.
And some professors take that as, oh, that's not plagiarism because you wrote it in your own words. It's like, no, the concept that you're understanding, the thing that you're trying to attempt to explain or define or articulate comes from someone else's work. That's
Yep.
plagiarism, technically speaking, if you don't cite them. And so, I know tons of people who do this. People
Me.
you'd never, don't be calling yourself out, okay? Don't be calling yourself out. But there are tons of people who have succeeded academically and gone to very high stations in academia utilizing this particular method. And
Yes.
many of the people whom are concerned about this are concerned about it because they fucking did it. Like, and so
Like the fact that they can do it and still be so concerned is just baffling to me sometimes. It's like you did it. You know how it works. Why are you trying to stop other people? What? It just blows my mind sometimes.
I really, I don't know. To me, there's a level of rage, like that I feel for this that like it's just bubbling under the surface.
It's just kind of like why I operate under that whole. It's just like the thought that whatever you write is going to be based off of something you've read or written before and whatnot. Because it's just like, to me, you're only going to be able to rewrite if you know what you're talking about to begin with.
You would hope.
You would hope.
You would hope.
Otherwise, you're really good at BSing material. But
Yeah.
like, even if you do BS a little bit of material, you have to have some understanding, because not you can't just take a thesaurus to a paragraph and hope to goodness it works.
I
Now that you can see.
mean, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's continue with the article.
Okay.
Students' views on ChatGPT. I like how like the students' views is like 2 paragraphs, and
Yeah.
like everything else has been like giant chunks saying no, bad ChatGPT.
How dare.
Yeah, students' views on ChatGPT are another issue entirely. There are those like Cobbs who can't imagine putting their name on anything bot generated, but there are others who see it as just another tool, like spell check or even a calculator.
Hey.
Can't possibly see where we kind of align. For Brown University sophomore Jacob Gelman, ChatGPT exists merely as a convenient research assistant and nothing more. Calling the use of ChatGPT to pull reliable sources from the internet cheating is absurd. It's like saying using the internet to conduct research is unethical, Gelman says, which I feel like is a great point. To me, ChatGPT is the research equivalent of typing assistant, Grammarly. I use it out of practicality, and that's really all. Cobbs expressed similar sentiment compared to AI bot to an online encyclopedia. Okay, there are 3 things I want to say. Okay,
Alright.
so first of all, I have at my disposal, relatively within arm's reach, a sort of like an online assistant. It's one of those Google Home devices, and I can ask it questions. So if I'm typing up a paper or I'm working on a podcast, I can ask a question and kind of help me kind of direct some of the things that I'm thinking, and perhaps lead me on to something that I might have missed.
Yeah.
I think ChatGPT kind of falls under this particular thing, because at the end of the day, the internet is a genie that has long since been out of the bottle. Okay, and the problem with trying to restrict or control elements of it, you're going to always have people who are going to object, and always going to find people who are going to agree to these controls. I think the people in power, the people in positions, the people who basically benefit the most from things being controlled are those who have already accomplished much of what they're trying to accomplish. And I think the people who are actually trying to learn and trying to, progress in the world are the people who are going to be in favor of these things. And so I think it showcases the position that are often not exactly acknowledged, that if you are trying to do something more than you are, then you are going to need an exploit somehow, because you need to find a way to level the playing field, or at least give yourself a fighting chance. And people whom have already accomplished things or already have like extra things in their wings, you know, like they have other
Yes.
support systems, they don't necessarily need that leveling because they're already in a superior position. I think that if you squash this type of like tool, you're just creating more inequality and denying access to relevant information. I think that there's going to be a very large lack of adequate professionals in the teaching sphere in the coming years.
Hmm.
I think the universities for the last 20 years have produced some of the worst professors and teachers
Lovely.
in the nation because they've been politicized by the left leaning media. And, you know, whether you're a leftist or not, you cannot deny the fact that if you involve politics in the educational system, you are absolutely robbing people of what's most important. And that is to be level headed and to be clear and concise with your information and present a
Hmm.
whole picture, or at least a picture that can be as accurate as possible. And I think that, like, that's the important takeaway I have for ChatGPT. The other thing I want to say
Okay.
is that it's absolutely a fucking calculator for words. All right, like it is absolutely a fucking calculator for words. Like if you were like, hey, you know what, you can't have spell check anymore. I promise you,
Oh God.
tomorrow
Oh Lord Almighty.
there are going to be millions of people's GPAs just plummeting. Okay, like
Uh,
I'll be 1,000%. Spelling, not my strong suit. Punctuation, not my strong suit. Has spell check changed the way I write? Yes. There are, you can only mispronunciate or more specifically misspell, because what'll happen is I'll pronunciate words and they get typed up. But like you can only do something wrong so often. You can not add commas, apostrophes, have run-on sentences, for so long before you go, oh, this is how you're supposed to write. And so,
He's like,
like,
wait a minute.
yeah, and so like you write papers and you eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, you can correct these things. These are the mistakes I commonly make. Okay, why are they mistakes? With spell check, it tells you why, and then you fix it. And then after you've done it several dozen, for me, hundreds of times, it eventually sinks in. Oh wait, this is the proper way to write this. And
It's like,
so
hold on, wait a minute.
I think what will end up happening is that ChatGPT likely is going to produce a lot of papers in early on in people's early academic careers that are going to be very underwhelming. But what I think the byproduct of that is that by the end of the point, by the time they need to have a full functioning understanding of something, they're going to be able to use ChatGPT to create a most nuanced response, something that's going to be inspiring and interesting. And because ChatGPT allowed them the opportunity to learn the skills to write that way, rather than being born that way to write. And I think that that's the byproduct. And I think the students that would basically use ChatGPT the entire time through their academic career, they never deviate, never change, never do anything like that at all. Those people are going to do that regardless. So yes, people who are not as qualified are going to hold degrees, and yes, there are going to be some people that exploit the system like that. But guess what? That happens already.
Yep.
It happens already. Like, and I can give you a name. I could give people a list of names that I will happily share on Patreon. Of people that I know like this that you can go look up and you can go talk to and you can go, wow, this person is fucking dumb. That hold lofty degrees. So like it is absolutely 100% like this is a real problem. So, Rose, when it comes to this, do you have any thoughts? So I have taken a lot of things away from this. This is your field of expertise. Please, what kind of other things do you have to share about this particular section?
Because like for this just intrigues me as to how the academic process is going to be able to handle ChatGPT. Because again, for me, it's just a research tool that you can base work off of if you don't know what the heck you're starting off as. Which, some professors, not the best professors, typically just think they can just throw assignments at students and try to have them do a good job, not realizing everything the students has to go through. Are they a
Mm-hmm.
full-time worker? Are they a family person? How many classes are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people have to take, anywhere between 3 to 5 classes. And depending on, what classes those are, you could have to no life it, or no sleep it, which is terrifying. So it's just like if this is a tool that helps students actually thrive rather than, burn out because of all the assignments,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have a student who's going to learn from what they're doing versus them specifically doing like anything the way I want it to and have them completely burn themselves out or learn nothing because they're trying so hard just to keep on top of everything.
Mm-hmm.
This is just as much a shortcut as anybody just Googling the information for the prompt.
Yeah, and I think that like that's the thing that a lot of people in academia are concerned about, right? Like I
Hmm.
remember like so like during the pandemic, right?
Hmm.
I talked to several professors during their office hours, and they a lot of times would view certain things from the ire of suspicion, right? They'd be like, "Are
Hmm.
you googling this kind of thing?" And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I met them in person and talked to them the way I did that they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this person isn't wasn't doing that at all."
So it's just like, yeah, because that's the hard part, because it's like you do have to act with some sort of suspicion. But once you talk to a student in person, it's going to be very obvious whether they actually know what they're doing and whether they're just using it as a tool, or if they're relying on a tool entirely for their career.
Oh. Hmm.
So it's very obvious, but you have to get that in-person confrontation in order to do that. You can't do it online, you can't do it asynchronous because you can hide quite a bit behind a screen, but there's not a lot that you can hide about your intelligence in person.
No, no, not really. I mean, like the best thing you can possibly do is have like a couple things like said or prepared, in advance,
Mhm.
and then steer the conversation into the thing that you're prepared for, and then say those things, and then you go, wow, and I can spot those people from like a mile away because what'll
Mhm.
happen is I'll intentionally change the conversation in the same context away from the thing that they had just said. And if they
Mhm.
don't have anything else to add, then I'm like, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's just like you need the long in-person confrontation to, really truly figure out are they actually good at what they're doing?
Yeah.
And that's honestly will probably show up once you're on a research team, once you're on a working team, if you're working professionally,
Hmm.
it's going to become clear very quickly. Are you good at your job or did you BS your entire way through up to where you are?
I.e., were you a brick or were you a sponge? All right. Well, before we close out for the night, I do
Okay.
want to ask a couple questions. This is that I
Okay.
think are kind of important. So, in researching this particular topic for myself, because this is
Yes.
not my wheelhouse, I came across a couple of discussions that happened. There was like some like a podcast, a Lex Freeman podcast,
Yeah.
where he was interviewing the person or a person who was kind of not necessarily in charge of ChatGPT,
Oh
but
yeah, you said. Yeah, at the beginning.
yeah, and he was just he's part of the development team. He's someone who's high up on there. Some he was very much like, well, this is a team based thing. This is not me
Yeah.
being the lead, and so I want to make sure I say that in that way because he was very humble
Okay.
about his involvement in the project. Maybe because he didn't want death threats, but
Eh,
in any
nobody
case,
likes a good death threat. Nah.
yeah. But there was like they were having this discussion about is ChatGPT version 3 or 4 sentient? Is it self aware?
Hmm.
And it kind of seemed like it was back and forth, right? Like it was like Lex kind of was in the camp of maybe it might be, or maybe it's about to be, and the guy who was basically working on the project was definitive. He was like, no, this is not. It's not sentient. But the fact of the matter is that so many questions you give it, so many responses, can trick you. They really can. I was messing around with the ChatGPT bot a couple days ago, and it was just I was able to create some pretty interesting, very foolish kind of like things where I could easily see someone being tricked into this. This isn't like the very obvious. This is an automated system. It had a way of almost appearing human in the way in which it was presenting its text, which is it showcases to me just how like dehumanizing texts are. You know, like they're not really like an actual way of. You need to speak. You know, you need to hear someone. You need to be able to hear the inflections in the voice to understand kind of temperament and mood, and these things are very, very important. But my question to you is: do you think that ChatGPT might be a sentient or self-aware or very close to it, or is it really just a calculator that fooled me?
At the moment, it is a really good calculator because, again, it is taking human-made writing material and assigning a bunch of probabilities, a bunch of algorithms to each of those.
Mm-hmm.
So if enough of those sound enough like a human, it will assign, and there's a lot of them in
Mm-hmm.
comparison to maybe like 5 out of like 100 articles.
Mm-hmm.
It will assign more probability to what is done more often. And humans can get repetitive, like a lot.
Yes, yes, they can.
So that is repeated in the writing. So if enough writing is used and enough of the targeted writing is used, it will pick up on that. So like there have been chat bots similar to GPT which can fool a person depending on how much they know about how the system works.
Mm.
So, like you had mentioned before, this may not be your cup of tea, so maybe just the questions you happen to be asking could be something that has been asked several 100,000 million times before. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's okay.
Because it's like it can pull those probabilities depending on the responses it has given before, which ones were thumbs up, which ones were thumbs down. Like plenty of people have used this thing to give it enough training data, and it's constantly getting more.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think it's self-aware because it's like I have also used it myself, and if it was self-aware, it would understand how mad I was about it because I was asking for one thing. I was asking for one particular matrix
Uh-huh.
to follow one particular constraint. Like I had two constraints, just two, and
Mm-hmm.
it kept messing up the one that was important.
So do you think that maybe it was fucking with you though? Like, is there a possibility that it was just fucking with you?
If it was, that is a really weird thing to input to a program.
Well, humans are really weird and chaotic.
Yeah, I know. But it's just like it's only the machine is only about as good as the humans who make it. So it's like if the humans itself are trolly, then it's probably going to be trolly. And my
have you
God, was
talked
I
to
angry.
have you talked to people who are in internet culture and who regularly use tech? Have you ever known anyone who wasn't a little trolly?
Just a little.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm trying to
So it's
say.
just
Like, I
like
mean,
this could just be messing with me, but if it was, then yay, I'm glad for yelling at it. Like I needed to get my frustration out, and I'm not about to punch my monitor, so I'll just scream in all caps. It's like, no, this was not what I wanted.
man, this makes me like very scared because if it ever did become sentient and people are like yelling at it in all caps, it's like, oh crap, we've now given it the fuel necessary to want to kill us all.
I'm pretty sure enough people have done it already.
Oh dear lord. Okay, all right. Well, with that being said, if do you have any more final thoughts?
No, I mean there is a bit more to the article, but like if people want to read the article, it'll be in the description below.
Yeah, so we'll make sure we add that. The main thing I wanted to get across was those things because
Yes, of course.
yeah, we don't have 5 hours. Uh, if you guys like to hear more about ChatGPT, let us know in the comment section below. If you liked the episode, make sure to hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed, please do because we definitely want to be growing. And make sure to stay safe and have some fun with ChatGPT because you never know, it could be something fun. And we'll see you all in the next one. Later, everybody.